It is May 10th and it's Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. And I'm not sure if you're going to be watching a cooking class today, or maybe your kids are watching, so they'll make you dinner tonight. But I'm really happy to be here, and I have many feelings about Mother's Day, but just feeling grateful to be a mom and to have had a wonderful mom. And I'm happy to be spending an hour with you guys today. So much has happened. First of all, we're at the 9th episode. Who in their wildest dreams would have ever thought that we would be here and we'd be in a lockdown? And I do live in Ra'anana, Israel, which is a beautiful suburb. And for all those out there, a big shout out. I know there's a bunch of Canadians, some Montrealers, some Israelis. Write in the chat box where you're from, say hi, because the idea of these cooking classes all started by Jordan with the intention on connecting everybody, connecting people during this time of isolation. And we do always have to cook, and we should cook nutritious meals and cook out of our pantry. So hence, this is the idea, hence we're on episode 9. But please connect online, and hopefully you'll find a friend, make a friend, and God willing that we'll all go for coffee together. And or better yet, the North Americans come to Israel and come on a beautiful trip here and make that your first booking to fly to Israel, because boy, oh boy, we would love to see you here. So the cooking class today, and yes, we're in the 9th episode. Yes, we're in Israel and we're starting to re-enter life, and that feels a little scary. And I know I went kicking and screaming into this lockdown because I need people. I love their energy, and I feed off of people. So the first 2 weeks were really, really hard for me, being, closed off from everything that I love, besides for my family, of course, but like that external energy. And so it took me a while to adjust, and hence, 8 weeks later, it's taking time to adjust also to the re-entry of life. As much as malls and everything are opened, it doesn't feel all, entirely safe yet, not sure what our boundaries are, not sure of just how we want to navigate. And, we've just sort of spent these 8 weeks sort of cleansing and restoring, and what do we want to bring in? What don't we want to bring in? Different habits we want to change. And so again, leaving the cocoon, and I don't have Steffi here today. She left the nest yesterday. And as she left, I was humming this song by Eric Einstein, Uf Gozal, When the Birdie Leaves Her Nest. And again, we're just continuously adjusting and shifting, and that's what makes us stronger. So we're digging again through our pantry and finding wonderful things to make, and bring some excitement to the table, because luckily we can keep coming back to the table and have great conversations with our family. And so today's menu is, we're going to be making a stir fry, which is a very fast cooking way of cooking. So all the work is in the mise en place, which means the preparation, but the actual cooking is chick-chock. But this only works if you're good to yourself and that you've pre-chopped and have things in pretty bowls like the TV show, because then you can do that in the morning or the night before, and then when you come home, it's zippity-doo-dah, and it's hot, and it stir-fry waits for no one. It's only good right when you serve it. Yeah, you could eat it as leftovers, but nothing tastes as good as a hot stir-fry when it's like sizzling, and that's when it peaks, okay? So this isn't a cholent that thrives on cooking for many hours. This is a very quick, high heat cook. And today we're going to be using tofu, which is a wonderful source of protein. It's not in the pantry, it's in the refrigerator. We're going to be using firm tofu today, and it's cheap, it's very high in protein, and it's something, incredibly versatile. There's all sorts of tofus. They're soft, silky, firm. We're going to be using the most basic, firm and unflavored, and of course we're going to flavor it up. And what you want to do is when it comes out of the box, If you don't want to use it all, you have to store it in Tupperware with water, okay? And you have to change that water every single day. Otherwise, it's going to go bad, okay? So if you don't want to eat it all, you can also wrap it well and freeze it. That's another thing. You know how much I love my freezer. But make sure you mark it and so you know what it actually is. When you do defrost it, it will have a little bit of a different texture to it, but still it's totally versatile and you can use it. In fact, you can crumble it much easier if you want to make like, like tofu scrambled eggs or a chili with it. It crumbles really nicely. So it can mimic like ground meat. But again, for all those tofu like not lovers, you can do it with chicken too, and I'm going to show you how you can do it with chicken as well. And a stir fry is a wonderful way to get rid of the random vegetables in your drawer. So it's almost good that our cooking class is on a Sunday because it's sort of after Shabbat and it's after a lot of weekend cooking. And okay, you have a stalk of celery, you have a little bit of carrot, you have maybe one floret of broccoli. And you really, the more colorful, the better. The more diverse in textures, the better. So there's no one way. I'm going to give you one idea of it, and then you can go crazy with it. So that's the first recipe. The second recipe we're going to make is soba noodles with roasted peppers and shiitake mushrooms. So I tried to think things that you may have in your pantry or you don't. Soba noodles are made out of buckwheat. So they're gluten-free, which is great for all the gluten-free people out there. But the thing is, when you're ever cooking pasta that has no gluten in it, you can't over-boil it, okay? If you overcook it, it turns into bleh, meal, and it's awful. And you've spent a lot of money because the smaller the bag, the more expensive they are. So, and you know, the darker the color, they're very expensive. So what you want to do is keep an eye. Don't do a load of laundry. Don't go to the mailbox. Don't do anything like that. Simply, I don't even know who goes to a mailbox anymore. I don't even know why I said that. Anyway, you just don't want to overboil your noodles, okay? So if you don't have the soba noodles, which we all don't, you can have regular pasta, and it works totally fine, but it's very white, not as nutritious. So we're always trying to find ways of fortifying our foods with whole grains and whole flours and stuff. So the other thing we're going to be doing as a pantry is I thought maybe you have some dried mushrooms. Maybe you had a miso recipe you wanted to make way back. The beauty of dried mushrooms is they don't go bad. So here's a dried bag of dried mushrooms. But truthfully, we should be all cleaning our pantry every Passover. So you shouldn't be finding any new discoveries now, okay? The holiday is only a month away. So everything should feel really fresh. You can be using dried mushrooms. And the thing with dried mushrooms is they only work if they're rehydrated. So what I did beforehand is just put one of the mushrooms into some water. You can put boiling water to speed it up because you know how much I love cooking very fast. Or you can just keep them soaking water and just keep them and they will soften over time. It just takes longer. But they are very hard. You want to keep them in a jar or a bag or something like that. They're like hard as rock. Like, can you hear that? They're very, very spongy, but they're wonderful. The juice that comes out of these dried shiitake mushrooms, you can make a beautiful broth with. In fact, I made an onion soup last week. I think everybody was posting onion soup, maybe from Canada, because I think you had a snowfall. I'm not even going to show you how beautiful a day it is here, but onion soup is so delicious. And so I didn't want to make a chicken broth, and I made a mushroom broth. And I used the shiitake mushrooms, which are really great. And even if you have fresh shiitake mushrooms, which we're going to use today, you always want to keep the stems, and the stems can go into your broth as well. Okay, so those are the two ingredients that we're going to make in the soba noodles that are very pantry items. If you have roasted peppers in your pantry, that's another idea that you can be using. I'm going to show you how to roast peppers by yourself, but you can always buy canned or jarred roasted peppers, which is another pantry item. And then the last recipe, which is one of my favorites, is chewy ginger spice cookies. And molasses is one of the main ingredients of it. But in Israel, molasses is much harder to find and not as ingrained in the recipes here. So what we're substituting with is the option of using Ceylon. And Ceylon is a date syrup. So you can use one or the other. I do have molasses because my cousin Carol went to go buy me a bottle. But you can use molasses, which is basically a thick syrup. And the Ceylon is a little bit sweeter than the molasses, but it really adds the chewiness to the cookie. So either one works beautifully. And what's really nice is that these are vegan and gluten-free. But if you don't have almond flour, you can use regular white flour. I'd like you to use spelt flour or something a little bit more healthy, but this is life and this is living in a lockdown. So use what you got. And also we're going to be using oat flour. And I'm going to show you how to make oat flour because I'm sure many of you have oats in your house, just some regular old-fashioned rolled oats. And we're just going to grind them up in the coffee grinder, without the coffee, of course, and get that going. So I am excited to be cooking with you. Jordan has the recipes. If anybody needs the recipes, I did post them on Facebook, and they're there for you, and you can share them with friends. It's no better compliment than having my recipes circulating and getting gorgeous photos from everybody that they're using them. So that feels the best. So I thank you for that feedback because I don't see anybody on the screen right now. So it really, it fills me up and makes me feel social again when I get all your feedback and the photos and the fact that your families enjoyed them. So also a big shout out to the Ezra community. Ezra is a not-for-profit organization that was started over 30 years ago by a South African woman. And it's all about connecting people in Israel. It started with Anglos and also giving back to community and supporting educational opportunities for children here in Israel. And they have a secondhand store, which I love, and a bookstore that finally are open. So you should know if you were cleaning out and Marie Kondoing your house during this time, which I simply was not, then you can bring over all that stuff to them. They would love it because one person's garbage is another person's treasure. Remember that. So what we're doing is we're taking the tofu. It's a firm, and notice that water that's spilt out, that's normal. What you want to do is you just want to press out the liquid. And if you don't want to do this by hand, you can always put like a heavy weight on it and just let it sit for a bit. But really, there's not that much in there. And what we're going to do is cut it into cubes. So I'm just cutting, you can cut it, remember we're making a stir fry, so I want everybody to get a little piece of the tofu in the stir fry. So you want to keep in mind what the size is that you're going to do. I'm doing about a half-inch cube. And it's so fun to cut. It's like everything is so perfect. But again, if you don't want to use it all and you're just cooking for two, put the rest in a Tupperware with water with a lid and make sure to change that water every day. So we're putting our tofu in the bowl here, and I'm just going to season a little bit. This is not like a brisket or something, a piece of meat that you can marinate for 2 days and it's going to get better. It's not going to get better. So just give it a little bit light. They are, a little bit of some soy sauce. I'm using low sodium soy sauce, and some toasted sesame oil. And toasted sesame oil is really lovely. It's dark. You see the color? Wow, it smells like sesame galore. It's so wonderful. And the beauty of it is that you need a very, very little bit to give a lot of flavor. And that's what you're always trying to look for when you're doing low-fat cooking and baking. You're trying to look for flavorful oils and vinegars that are not, you don't have to like douse them with it, but you can just have little accents and it brings everything to life. So there we go is our tofu. And what I'm going to do is stick it into the oven for about 15 minutes. And we're going to just get that a beautiful color and give it some texture. So when we add it to our stir fry, then it's going to be like a little bit more crispy to it instead of deep frying it, which is always an option, but not my favorite option. Okay, so the next recipe we're going to go on to are the chewy molasses cookies. So any of you out there baking along with me, I hope you have found all the ingredients and you can grab them together. What we have some almond flour, and that's basically ground up almonds. And if you want to make your own, you can stick it into your food processor, a bunch of almonds. It's better if you roast the almonds first, cool them, and then grind them. and make your own flour. And if you've made too much, put it in the freezer, because you know that nuts have fat in them and they go rancid very quickly. We have some coconut oil that I'm using. And if you don't want to use coconut oil, you can use some butter. If you want some unsalted butter, we have sugar and some beautiful vanilla and some molasses. Let me just get my measuring spoon. Okay. Okay, so the recipes, with baking are a lot less forgiving than they are with cooking. So you want to be organized, okay? So the first mixture that we're going to be putting together is the almond flour and the oat flour together, okay? So I'm going to put that into this bowl. Here's my oat flour. Remember, it's just ground up oats, and the ground up oats give it a lot of moisture to the dough, so it makes it chewy. That's really, really important. Do I keep my sesame oil in the fridge? I do not keep my sesame oil in the fridge. That's my cousin Sharon over there. And no, I do not. But some people do, but I don't. I guess because I go through it very quickly, but if you don't feel like you're going to be going through it quickly, then you should keep it in the fridge. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about making your own oat flour, because a lot of people are going to look at this and go, I'll never do that. Yes, you will. If you have a coffee grinder like so, nothing very fancy at all, basically take your rolled oats, plain, okay? Nothing added to them, anything like that. Pour them in. Notice I keep all my grains very sealed here, because you don't want to have any friends visiting. And then what you want to do is just grind it up like this. Count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Done. And give it a bang. And here is our beautiful oat flour. Beautiful. Okay, so when you're making it, don't make 1 tablespoon at a time. Be good to yourself. Make yourself a bunch. Put it in the freezer. Mark it oat flour, and you'll be so happy. Does anybody have the Neiman Marcus chocolate chip cookie recipe? The secret ingredient. Okay, we're back. Is everybody back? Hello, everybody back? We lost everybody for a second.
Okay.
Everything okay, Jordan?
Yeah, so far I think everything got cut out for a second, but
that's so weird. Okay, we're back.
We're back.
Yay, thank you for coming back. Okay. All right, so the other ingredients we're on, I just showed you guys oat flour, right? And how easy it is and how you're all gonna make it. And that was also the secret ingredient, the Neiman Marcus chocolate chip cookies, which you can Google, which is fantastic. So the other ingredients that are dry, we have cinnamon, we have ginger. Wow, it's so fantastic, dry ginger, because in our stir fry, we're gonna be using fresh ginger, which are very, very different. And we have baking powder, and we have baking soda and a little bit of salt. The salt is important, guys, because the salt balances the sweetness of the cookie. And you know how everybody loves the salt sweet thing. So we're putting that in together, and make sure you get every bit of it, because it smells so, so fantastic. So what you want to do is you want to sift it to get the lumps out of the almond meal and the oat flour. Remember, we just grinded it. It's very, very moist. So there's 2 ways you can sift it. You can sift it with, you don't need to, bring out that old cranker thing that we had. Just you can sift it using a whisk just to get out those lumps. Or you can even go through a fine mesh strainer, whatever you wish. Today, it's totally fine to just, mine is really, really fine. And I'm just taking out any lumps that I see, okay? So that's one bowl. The other bowl that we're gonna be doing is I have coconut oil, and my coconut oil is at room temperature. And that's a big issue here in Israel, because when we have a bottle of coconut oil, it turns into liquid all the time here. So you have to refrigerate the coconut oil to keep it solid. So I took this out, and it's nice and soft. And we're going to be adding 1/3 cup of sugar to it. Again, you can adjust that if it's too much sugar. You can do a little bit less if you want. But I really find that these taste really fantastic. You don't need any fancy appliances here. I mean, if you have your KitchenAid and it's already, since Corona, it's on your counter and you want to use it as much as possible, hey, definitely use it. but it's not a must to make this, especially because my coconut oil is so soft. It's so easy and able to incorporate my sugar, which is great. If it was hard as a rock, we would have a whole different conversation. I'm going to be adding a teaspoon of vanilla extract. There we go. And I'm going to be adding 3 tablespoons. I have the molasses, so I'm going to use the molasses, but I did use the Ceylon last week, and it's fantastic. So you can use that as well, or you can even do a combination of both if you want. So when you say slow as molasses, it's slow as molasses. It's kind of probably how all of you feel this Corona lockdown is. It feels slow as molasses. But you know what? As we're starting to come back, I'm like, what did I do for 2 months? What were we doing? But I'm sure many of you have been very, very productive. I follow on Facebook people making masks and delivering food and all sorts of wonderful, wonderful initiatives. Never mind homeschooling and keeping your house normal, feeding 3 times a day. I get it. I totally feel it. So we're going to mix this together. So remember, we have the molasses, we have the coconut oil, and the vanilla. And I'm going to put a drop of a tablespoon of milk. And I'm using oat milk because I have oat milk. But if you have almond milk, you can use almond milk. If you have rice milk, you can use rice milk. If you have regular milk, go use your regular milk. Whatever you have, use it. Because this is all about using your ingredients that you have in your pantry. I happen to have oat milk, which is my new latest fun thing to do, to enjoy it in my coffee, and it froths up gorgeous. If you happen to have an espresso maker, it makes the most delicious cappuccinos. So we have a really, really blended, creamed coconut oil. Wow, it smells so good. We're going to mix this up. And molasses or Ceylon are a great thing to keep in your pantry. It feels like the jar gets all sticky. It's sort of like, you know, you're keeping like NyQuil in your medicine cabinet. It's something like it's a fixture that you always have in your pantry and that you can use and enjoy. And it just adds that special something to your ingredients, to your recipes. So mixing, now I'm adding my wet into my dry, right? And we're making a cookie. So don't worry, this again, if you want to pull out your KitchenAid, you can do it, but you really don't need to. And make sure that your oven is preheated. That's important, 350 degrees, which is 180 for Israel. And always when you're baking, preheat your oven, unless of course the dough needs to be made the day before. But hey, this one doesn't. Talking about doing something the day before, I just did the sourdough challenge, and that took, thanks to Jordan, who is doing all the Thrive stuff. He taught me how to do sourdough, and that is all about patience and waiting. But so worth the results. Really a fun thing to do, because for me it was an exercise in being exact, which I'm not. So he even bought me a little scale that I was measuring everything, and it was so much fun. And I was really proud of myself that I did something from start to finish, and everybody enjoys getting fresh bread. And it really is a different art. And I make challah every single week. And the whole practice of baking sourdough and how you pull it and you barely touch it, it's totally different than challah. And I love making challah, but you know, we have room for lots of different things. And that was one of my discoveries in Corona. So I'm going to
Shawna, really quickly, can you
Yeah.
make sure that you let people know the ingredients, the quantities
The
as you
cookies,
add them?
sure.
Yeah, a couple of people mentioned that.
Okay, so the cookie recipe is 1 cup of almond flour, 1 cup of oat flour, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1 teaspoon ground ginger, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. That's all your dry ingredients. The next, a quarter of a cup of coconut oil, solid form, a third of a cup of sugar, 3 tablespoons of either molasses or Ceylon, which is a date syrup, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 1 tablespoon of any kind of milk you want, okay? Preheat the oven to 350, line a baking sheet with some parchment paper, grab a child, or, you know, get your hands going, depending on what size you want. I like big ginger cookies, but if you want smaller ones, do smaller ones. Again, you know my rule, just pick a size and be constant with it. Just pick it and be consistent, because otherwise you don't want to be waiting for one that is bigger than the other one. So I'm giving these spread like crazy. So give yourself a lot of room, especially if you're doing big ones like me, and give a lot of separation. Again, you can always freeze the dough, like in the balls like this. You can put them on a sheet and flash freeze them, and then once they're flash frozen, like 20 minutes, put them in a Ziploc bag, and then you have balls of dough ready to bake off when we're gonna have friends over again. So, or you wanna just limit the amount of cookies in your house, which, believe me, I definitely do. That's why leaving little treats at your neighbor's doors is a wonderful way to share the goodness and to do portion control. So I was able to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cookies. Here we go. Everybody see? And I'm going to put these into the oven now, and you shall see how great they're going to be. So again, you can freeze the dough. You can also freeze the dough, just make a log, like be your own toll house, roll it up, freeze the log, and then slice them as you want them. But you know, they'll take the shape, whatever that slice is. So another thing, you can just drizzle a little bit of sugar right on top, just to give it a nice little crunch. That's always an option. If any of those Canadians out there, if you have any maple sugar that someone gave you as a gift, you can also put that on top as well. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a pat and send them into the oven, okay? Give my hands a wash. They're actually moisturized from all that beautiful coconut oil, which is so nice. So you can also have home spas in your pantry by using coconut oil and sesame oil. They're wonderful ways to rejuvenate your skin. Okay, so the next recipe we're going to go on to are the soba noodles. And the soba noodles, like I told you, are a wonderful noodle because they're made from buckwheat, and they cook super fast, so you want to always undercook them a little bit. And I cooked the whole package of them, but what happens when you cook pasta is starch. They're going to gummy up together, right, if you do it in advance. The fastest way to loosen them up, just put some cold water. You don't need to put any oil or anything on them, because they're just going to drink that. So you just want to loosen it up with a little bit of some cold water, and it all comes back to life again without adding any unnecessary oils to it. So our salad is going to be made up. We have roasted peppers, and the peppers look like this. And what I did was I don't have Steffi here, guys, so I can't have my spot on the grill. But what I did was I literally put my pepper on top of my flame here, and I had the fire going, and I just kept turning it thanks to my amazing tongs. You know how much I love tongs. And you just keep turning it over the gas until it starts to blister and turns black like this. And then I put it into a bowl and I covered it. I didn't have any paper bags. Nobody gives out paper bags here. So, and I just covered it, and the steam allows the skin that I just charred to separate from the flesh of the pepper. So I haven't burnt the pepper. I just took off, I blistered the skin of it. And for many, the skin, is difficult to digest. So this actually makes the pepper more digestible. So that's all I did. Again, you can buy them. You can also do this in your barbecue. You can put them on the top shelf of your barbecue. There's only one shelf. Some people have 2 shelves. And close it, put a high heat, and then just go and turn them. And again, put them in a bowl or a paper bag and steam them and then clean them up. You could also do this in the oven too, under the broiler, but make sure you put a piece of tin foil on the bottom shelf, because peppers are full of juices and they're naturally going to drop those juices, and you don't want to be cleaning your oven during this time. First of all, my oven, when I put the oven cleaner on it, I want to evacuate. It's the most worst smell in the whole entire world. And oven cleaners, yuck, I don't even own oven cleaners. So tinfoil or a sheet of parchment paper on the bottom to catch, or a pan just to catch those juices, and be good to yourself, because it's really worth it in the long run. So what you want to do is just take your pepper, and take your fingers, I should say, and just pull off that black on the pepper. And that's all I'm doing. I'm not doing this underwater because I don't want to lose all the amazing flavor of the charredness of the pepper. And if I would run this underwater and clean it all, I can clean my hand now, but I don't want to, dilute the pepper's flavor, because now it has great, great flavor. And don't worry if it's not exact and you still have some pieces of the skin on it. It's fine. It's softened and it's homemade, and that's all that matters. You just want to take off the core of it, because that's not fun, and any of the white part. And I also have a yellow pepper. So I'm taking the yellow pepper off as well. You see how fast it just comes off? And this is a good thing to do with your kids. Get their hands dirty, not to be afraid of getting your hands dirty. I love getting my hands dirty, but I know there's a lot of people don't. So I'm sure everybody has gloves in their house these days. So you could use the gloves, but really it's a good activity. And always I find when you're doing these activities, it's great conversation. Look, I'm talking to you guys. So it's a great opportunity to bring up conversation when you give everybody tasks in the kitchen. They want to feel included, but they just need a job. So empower them, get yourself some help. It is Mother's Day. So we're always trying to find ways to lighten our load and to share in the joy. So I'm going to take my knife, and I'm going to remember where's my pasta? My pasta is nice and long, right? So I want to cut my peppers nice and long so that when I put it into the salad, we're going to have a piece of everything in it. If I cut little squares, all the squares are going to drop in the bottom, and no one's going to get a piece of my beautiful pepper that we roasted. So you always want to think of the pasta shape that you've cooked and line up your chopping style to go with that noodle, okay? I am smelling the tofu, so I'm going to take out the tofu. Oh, beautiful. Here's our beautiful tofu that has a suntan. You know how much I love when my food has a little bit of a suntan, so it doesn't look just like white, like cubes of sponge. That does not appetize me at all. So I'm going to cut my pepper into nice, thin slivers. And this is, I just cut my knife. I didn't cut my knives. I sharpened my knives, which is something on my list. I'm sure all of you say, one day I'm going to sharpen my knives. Well, I sharpened my knives the other day, and wow, they're smoking sharp. So I'm taking this nice and slow. But sharpening knives is another activity. You just need to have a sharpening stone in your house that you need to soak, and then run all your knives over it. That's an activity, along with, polishing and all sorts of other things. But really, try to find some of the stuff that you really love to do and not the things you need to do, because, this is really an opportunity of time. So I am slicing these beautiful peppers that have been roasted. Again, I had yellow and red available to me. If you guys are lucky, you have orange, you can do orange. You have half of an orange and half of a red, yellow, use it. Let's not waste. There's no wasting during this period of time, during any time, but especially now. And I don't know if your deliveries are taking 5 days, or, you cherish every single thing that you do have. So look how beautiful the peppers look. And I really believe that food tastes better depending on how you chop it. So these, peppers, they're going to be, first of all, flavorful from the roasting. No oil, extra oil is added in here. But also the daintiness of the salad is really nice and welcome. So clean off your board. I'm going to grab a bowl, and we're going to put beautiful, I'll just take the water out. Nice ceramic bowl. That was actually given by a friend in Toronto. Here we go. So we're going to be adding the soba noodles. And again, if you are only eating for 2 tonight, like I'm not going to use them all right now in here because I don't have that many eaters in my house. So I'm going to use only some of them. I'm going to add the peppers. There we go. I'm just going to grab the recipe. So for all you guys, the recipe is 1 pound of buckwheat noodles, otherwise called soba noodles, or you can use spaghetti, 1 red pepper roasted and sliced into julienne, 1 yellow pepper, same thing, roasted, peeled, and sliced in julienne strips. The next thing we're going to be adding is some green onions. So everybody knows these are green onions, or otherwise called scallions, and we're going to use the whole thing chopped up. And I chop them on a bias, which means I cut them on an angle to give it a little of an Asian twist to it. I love these. If you find that while you're cutting them, which happened to me, I was cutting them and I started to cry, they were so strong, just put them in a little bowl of ice water for like 10 minutes, and that will take the bite out of them, and they'll also keep the greenness and perkiness of them if you want to chop them up in advance for anything. So as I talked to you about the shiitake mushrooms beforehand, I'm going to be using fresh shiitake mushrooms, which look like this. They kind of look like an umbrella. And what you want to do is just gently tear off the stems and use the stems for your broth. And then what you want to do is take your knife, and you can literally tear it if you want to, or you can slice them thinly, like what I said, to keep it in line with the pasta shape. So we have all these beautiful mushrooms, and mushrooms are yum, yum, yum. But again, if you don't like mushrooms, you don't need to use the mushrooms. You can just have it roasted peppers. They'll be also delicious. And then we have to make the salad dressing. And the salad dressing is basically, we're going to be using some orange juice. And I just juiced an orange because I had some oranges. We're going to put some soy sauce. And it calls for 2 teaspoons of 3 tablespoons of fresh orange juice, or you can use Tropicana. We're going to use 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. So we're going to eyeball this. Okay, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. If you don't want to use soy sauce, you can use tamari also, which is a natural soy sauce. And we're going to be using 2 teaspoons of toasted sesame oil. And the sesame oil is going to give the silkiness and the amazing flavor to it. So I'm going to take my whisk, and you don't need to, you can do it just simply with a fork, whatever. Just mix that up. And I'm going to take a little bit. Wow, it's very nice because the orange juice has balanced the saltiness of the soy sauce. Remember, I'm not using it all because I haven't used all the pasta. And mixing that up together. Wow, that looks so good if everybody can see. And I'm going to be adding, I have a husband who hates coriander. So if you have coriander, you can definitely use coriander. I'm going to be using some fresh cut flat parsley, which again, you know, I keep it in water with, and it's flat leaf parsley. I like that better than the curly parsley. And just grab a piece off, and you want to just roll it on your counter to give it a nice chop, a fine chop. And that will give, I always love adding green to my food. I know we have the green scallions, but it just looks amazing. But again, if you like cilantro or coriander, put that in. And we also have some toasted sesame seeds. And sesame seeds taste great, especially when they're toasted and have their suntan. That's really, really great. Here we go. So this is the beautiful salad that can be made. It's wonderful for lunch. It's wonderful as a side dish, just on its own. You can throw nuts into it. It's very, very versatile and really healthy and light. You don't feel like heavy after you've eaten it. Okay, I'm smelling the cookies, and I'm going to grab the cookies out. Wow, these are looking good. Here, everybody. Whoops, I don't want to lose them. You can see they smell great. And remember, you always have to put them on a baking rack, right? Because the baking rack, very important. It elevates them, and so they don't sweat. Okay, so I'm going to put them right over here and let them cool. And wow, do they look terrific. I'm so excited. Such a comfort food, having a warm ginger cookie, and you can have some ice cream or yummy, so love it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be making is the stir fry. And notice I did the stir fry last because I want to enjoy it right away. And that's called organizing yourself. And every time you want to create recipe, like a meal, you always want to think what needs to be ready, what can sit, what can't sit. Make yourself a roadmap, because you're going to really appreciate yourself when you do stuff like that. Just take the extra few minutes. Think about me and my sourdough. I could take the extra 2 days to make bread. You can take the extra few minutes to roadmap what you're going to be doing, and you'll be set up for success. And that's what this is about, right? You're spending time in and out of that kitchen, and have some techniques that help you stay organized and maximize the food, and cook less with less ingredients, but add more and more diversity and more flavor. Okay, so I'm just going to clean up my area, because then you could breathe and you can actually see. I'm going to bring in my little burner, which I'm so excited. My sourdough recipe. So that's Jordan's recipe, and I'm sure Jordan would be happy to share his sourdough recipe. I'm going to be using this pan today, and I bought this in Nazareth like 2 months ago, right before we actually went into Corona. And who knew I'd be using it now for doing a demonstration in my own house. So I'm really excited to be using it. It's great. It's just a butane gas, and it just lights up, and it's great. So what we're going to be doing is, the first thing with anytime you're doing stir fry is, like I said, you have to have your mise en place ready. So I have my green onions, and I'm only using the white part first. I have peppers that we're also going to be slicing. I'm using red and yellow peppers. I have some soy sauce. I have a bit of cornstarch. I have a little bit of sugar. I have some water, because I didn't have any broth. I have some snow peas, some yummy roasted cashews, ginger, fresh Israeli garlic. So I'm putting everything out there. And the thing with stir fry is that you want to have everything ready beforehand, okay? So the one thing I wanted to finish off is cutting the peppers. This is a pepper day, clearly. So if you don't, I use half the red pepper to roast and half the yellow pepper to roast, and this is the other half. So that's something you can do as well. I don't even know if you're going to be making this all the same day, but whatever. You can also just serve this stir fry with rice, and something as simple as that as well. Okay, so we have our tofu, which we did beforehand, and we have bell pepper, we have cloves of garlic, and my garlic, I'm not going to be running through. I need my big knife for this. I'm not going to be putting my garlic through the fine mesh, the garlic press, because I don't want it to be very small, because it burns so quickly, right? So you always want to chop your garlic. This garlic is so fresh. I just got this from the market here in Israel, and I didn't go to the market. It was sent to me from the market. It is so soft. The paper is not even dry like it used to. It's like you're peeling it. It's unbelievable, and the smell is outrageous. That is something very, very special. So I'm just taking my garlic out of the skins. If you don't like to do this, you can also put this in a bowl of hot water, and the skins come off very easily like that as well. If you don't feel like bruising the garlic, this can go into a broth. This smells absolutely fantastic. Just chop up your garlic. Whoops, that's the end of it. Chop it up. Doesn't have to be tiny, because I don't want it to burn. Remember that. Okay, and then we have here another beautiful aromatic item. This is a ginger root, and you always have to take the skin off the ginger root, okay? This is keeping a piece like this of ginger root in your fridge is a wonderful way to stay healthy, especially if you have a sore throat or anything. It's like kitchen pharmacy. Having this in, if you ever have a sore throat, you can grate some ginger into boiling water, and you really will feel drinking it, the energy going to your throat. It's wonderful. It adds so much flavor. If you are going away, God, I hope that we go away one day again, you can freeze it and just wrap it in cellophane, or you can chop it. I learned it from an Indian woman when I took a class when I lived in Toronto, and she takes her whole ginger. She peels it, puts it in her food processor, and pulses it, so chops it, and then freezes it in mounds and flash freeze it, and then stick it into a Ziploc bag, and then you have your fresh garlic right out of your freezer. And it's not something bought, it's not preserved in something else, so that's an idea. When you are buying garlic, you should hear that. You shouldn't be pulling and tugging, and it shouldn't be blue and gray, and it shouldn't have strings. It should pop like that, and you should go, wow, it smells so good. And what you want to do is just take a spoon and just scrape off the skin of the ginger. That's all. Just comes right off. So this way you don't waste by taking a knife and hacking it away, because you're going to have so much loss from that. So you don't want to do that. And again, you can keep all these scrapings for a broth, especially if you're making an Asian broth. And I did that. For my onion soup, I told you I made the other day, I put ginger and I put 10 cloves of garlic, and I added the mushrooms. It was like, wow, it had personality, let's just say that. So I'm gonna take the ginger and just chop it up. It's a beautiful chop, it's not stringy. And again, wrap up the rest of yours, keep it in your fridge or your freezer, depending on how fast you're gonna be using it. And this is gonna be our wonderful, wonderful flavoring to this stir fry. So this is very important. If any of you like heat, you can put some red pepper flakes in as well. And then we also have snow peas. And so the snow peas have been washed. You can also, if you want, you can cut them, on a bias if you'd like to meld with the what am I making, the stir fry, but it's not a must. So it's whatever you decide that you want to do. And that's it. So we have everything ready. I'm going to put my stove on, and I hope you guys can see it. See the fire? Yeah, that's the fire. I'm going to preheat my wok. And put my wok on here. And the first thing, anytime you're doing with stir fry, is that you want to preheat the pan. The whole thing about the stir fry is the heat, and that's why it's shaped like this, because it holds the heat in such a way that it allows for this very, very fast cooking. So this is what I'm doing right now. There's no oil added yet. Where is my oil? Is this my oil? I think there's my oil. I'm just going to be using a little bit of some canola oil. You can use coconut oil if you like to. It's totally your choice. And know that we're going to heat the wok first. Then we're going to be adding the oil. And then we're going to be adding the pepper, the garlic, the ginger, and the scallion whites, okay? So the pepper, the garlic, the ginger, and the scallion, it's starting to smoke. So I'm going to put my oil in here now. And you know when it's ready, you can put like one thing in and it starts to sizzle. There we go, which it's doing right now. So I'm going to put my garlic. Wow. And remember, water and oil are not friends. So if your vegetables are very wet, then it's going to come right back at you. So just be mindful of that. There we go. We're putting our snow peas. Wow, does it smell good in here?
Hey, Shawna, since Steffi's not there to hold the camera in there, make sure you tilt that forward so we can see in the camera.
Can you see?
Yeah, at various stages. We want to see it.
Okay. Here we go. So I'm stir frying this up. Beautiful, beautiful. In the meantime, I'm just going to make my slurry. I have 1.5 blah 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 blah. Here's my soy sauce. 1.5 tablespoons of soy sauce. 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch. I'm going to mix that together. There we go. And that's the cornstarch. If you have extra potato starch from Passover, you can use that as well. That's going to thicken our sauce for this, okay? There we go. Smells good. Here we go. See, it's a very fast cooking. Okay, I'm going to be adding my tofu that I have right here that we cooked so beautifully. Go. And we're going to add our sauce. Going to thicken it up. Add a little bit of sugar. Wow. And there we go. I have beautiful green onions. Everybody see? There we go. The green onions, the tops of the green onions to the top, and I put a little bit of sesame. I have to put my cashews, my cashew nuts. There we go. Beautiful cook. Now for all those who want to do chicken, I would do the same thing. Like I would, you can marinate the chicken with a little bit of soy sauce. First of all, cut the chicken into small pieces all around the same size. You can marinate it for 20 minutes if you want, a little soy sauce and the sesame oil. Heat up your pan, as I did in the beginning, and first saute that chicken in half the oil, 1.5 teaspoons of the oil beforehand. And once it's just about cooked, take it off and then continue cooking how we cooked and then add it back in because you don't want the chicken to dry out. That's the whole idea of it. Okay?
What other utensil can you use if you don't have the mesh spoon? Someone's asking.
What's the question?
What other utensil can you use if you don't have the mesh spoon like you were using?
This, you can use anything that, like a wood spoon, anything like that you can use. This just makes it look very authentic, but you can use anything. And if you don't have a wok, you can just do it in a heavy frying pan as well. So it's very, very versatile. Okay, so I heated this up and I'm just adding a little bit of the broth, guys, because I want to thicken up the sauce. And the broth mixed with the cornstarch is what's going to, put this back on. The broth with the cornstarch is what's going to thicken up the sauce. And the broth, again, I'm using a little bit of water, but if you have any vegetable broth or chicken broth, it's always wonderful. So that's what creates the yummy sauce. So that's why it's important to add it. This looks really good. Here we go. And you just want to cook it so the greens are green. Again, if you don't have the snow peas, you can use broccoli, you can use cauliflower, you can use mushrooms. You know, you really can, play with it as much as you want. So I'm going to put it into a bowl so everybody can see because you do eat with your eyes. And I love to show them the presentation. There we go. Everybody see how gorgeous. And this could be a really very fast dinner. Again, that's if you have the tofu, but you can have tofu in your freezer, which is great. And any vegetables that you have in your fridge. It's very, very forgiving. So we have beautiful stir fry. We have our soba noodles with roasted peppers and shiitake mushrooms. Really, really lovely. This is at room temperature. And then we have our cookies, which I'm going to put on a platter so you can see. They're beautiful and chewy, and they spread out. Here are the cookies. Okay. So good. Look how they chew. Chewy, chewy. Wow, amazing. Anyhow, I want to thank you guys. It's so good to see you, and I wish you guys continued health, a happy, happy Mother's Day. Stay home, stay well, and stay cooking, and keep sending me photos of your stuff. I love getting it. It's the best feedback ever. And it's so great that we're on episode 9 together. And thank you for teaching me how to do Zoom and teaching me how to do a cooking class in my very own kitchen on a computer and connecting all my worlds together. I have such gratitude. Really, this was part of how I survived Corona. So thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. And thank you, Shawna. Happy Mother's Day, everybody.